And joining me now for more is Pepe Escobar, correspondent for the Asia Times, who has been covering Libya from Brazil. He joins us now from Sao Paulo. I want to thank you for being here, Pepe.
Thank you.
Now, drones have had just a 2% success rate in Pakistan since 2004, yet they've ignited tensions between Islamabad and Washington. That's just one of the consequences. What do you think U.S. policymakers are thinking putting them in Libya?
They're desperate. Well, Mike Mullen said it right. It was a stalemate. We all knew it would be a stalemate, so NATO didn't work. The Tomahawks in the beginning, almost 200 of them didn't work. So what do? You call the drones. But it's not going to work because, as they were announcing, in fact, there are 5 predators based in Sicily. I just found out. There are only 5 predators in Sicily at the moment. They have to take off from land, so they cannot take off from an aircraft carrier, so they have to be based somewhere. So they are based in Italy, probably there will be 10, 15 of them. But what can they accomplish? Are they going to bomb civilian areas in Misrata, Ajdabiya, or Tripoli, where Gaddafi's forces are already disguised as civilians? It's not that you're going to find a column of tanks to be bombed by the predators. This is urban warfare, and the Pentagon is lying once again, saying there will be no collateral damage. We just have to look at the record at the tribal areas to see this is not true.
Well, that's a great point. And, one of the whole point of this UN, now NATO mission is to protect civilian casualties, to stop civilians from being killed. But drones are known to have civilian casualties. I mean, the LA Times did a report showing how in Afghanistan, all the high technology that they're equipped with doesn't help screen friend versus foe. That's one of the major issues here. So what gives?
In the minds of the Pentagon, these drones have a kind of whole 2001 mind, so they can identify between civilians and unfriendlies. This is obviously not true. And coming back to the tsunami of hypocrisy and lies, we have been told that this is not a U.S. war. Wrong. The war was started by AFRICOM, the African Command. That was its first African war. The Tomahawks were launched by General Carter Ham, which is the commander of AFRICOM. Then the war switched to NATO, which is basically the Pentagon weaponized arm in Europe. Nothing is decided in Brussels without an American okay. And now that we have been told that the U.S., as of last Thursday, is out of strike missions in Libya, now we have U.S. predators on the ground. So it's one lie feeding off another, non-stop. And soon we're going to have boots on the ground, of course.
Well, back to that in a second. But politically speaking, was this a smart move for the Obama administration? With drones doing these strikes, American lives aren't at stake. You can win over the American population by telling them that nobody's going to die from U.S. soil.
Absolutely, because the American way of techno war implies no boots on the ground and no American casualties. So, in fact, if I was Donald Trump, I would be suggesting to send 250 drones to southern Italy and then finish off this war basically in 2 or 3 weeks.
And take the oil. That would be part of his argument as well.
Because this is the Donald Trump option. We couldn't take the oil off Iraq. Now we have an opportunity in Libya.
There you go. To your point of boots on the ground, what makes you think that? And what do you see happening here? A lot of accusations of mission creep. I think we have some evidence of that with Gates saying that this is going to be that regime change has always been the plan. That this is going to be a long haul. Dispatching drones. A lot of reasons to believe that this is not going to end anytime soon with the stalemate on the ground as well. So what do you think really, where do you think this is really headed?
Well, what it looks like is we already have SAS, British boots on the ground. We have French intelligence on the ground already. We have the CIA operators for more than a month now. I would say sooner or later we're going to have another UN resolution to legitimize Anglo-French-American boots on the ground. That's the only way to win a civil war. You won't win a war with Tomahawks, with airstrikes, and even with these very intelligent drones.
A UN resolution? What about, though, Brazil, Russia, India, China? They abstained before. Do you think they would that some of those on the Security Council would veto now, Russia and China?
That will be the clincher, in fact, because in the previous vote, the BRICS coordinated their voting beforehand. they were saying, "Hey, this resolution is open-ended. It's a quagmire. We cannot be involved into it." And Germany also said the same thing. So that's why they all abstained. And obviously, they didn't want to antagonize the Americans at this stage. But if, in this case, would be, again, an Anglo-French-American draft resolution, this time, I'm sure the BRICS will say, no, enough is enough.
Okay, and then just real quickly, we just have another minute here, but I wanted to ask, 76 protesters killed in Syria today. That's just one more example of the death toll and the unrest in other neighboring nearby countries in the Middle East and North Africa. Is this just more evidence that what's going on in Libya is kind of just misguided and out of place? Why Libya? Are there more people asking that question where you are?
Yeah, I wish we had more time, Lauren, to talk about Syria. But Syria is very specific. It's a much more complex problem than Libya because there is an internal opposition movement, legitimate, that has been brewing for the past few years. And at the same time, there's a lot of foreign intervention, especially from Jordan and especially the House of Saud in Saudi Arabia. So it's a mix of circumstances. I would say if Syria really implodes, the consequences for the Middle East will be gigantic, because in the 19th century, Syria was Greater Syria. Lebanon, Jordan, and Israel, that didn't exist, of course, were part of Greater Syria during the Ottoman Empire. So if there is a disintegration of Syria, nobody knows who would be in charge. A majority Sunni, the Alawis would be sideline. What would happen to the Shiites? Would the Lebanese Shiites help the Shiites in Syria? Nobody knows. So this would involve a much in-depth discussion, I would say.
And meanwhile, not as much attention paid to that as everybody's focusing on Libya. But I want to thank you for giving us your perspective, and we'll have to have you back on to talk more about Syria. That was Asia Times correspondent Pepe Escobar. Always a pleasure.